Sweet. I think we are live. Yeah, we're good. Okay, tribe, good evening and welcome to Monday Night Live. James Miller is our guest, and James has a lengthy background here. So I'm gonna read a little bit because James, you're a fascinating guy, and I want to give you the due that you deserve. So James is the executive producer and host of his nationally broadcasted and syndicated radio show, James Miller Lifeology, right?
That's correct.
James is a licensed psychotherapist and a piano composer who's been in the mental health field for over 20 years. And then after 13 years in private practice in DC, you said, enough with this.
Enough with this.
You created Lifeology and you rolled out to Palm Beach.
Yes, I did.
I love that. So James, Lifeology is where you globally help people simplify, transform their spirit, mind, and body. And tonight, we are going to talk about streamlining your life and leading an effective life. And there's one more thing I wrote, which I think is important. Awareness on how to expeditiously, your word, transition into another role in one's life and how to be effective at that and live a more harmonious life. So yes. James, welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm honored to be a guest here. Rock Thomas was actually a guest on my show earlier, actually at the end of last year. So if you get a chance to listen to that, I'm totally going to link my site here. Go to jamesmillerlifeology.com and you can go to you can scroll down and you can hear that. But yes, I'm really looking forward to this. So Lifeology, and I was telling you in the pre-call, so Lifeology itself is a literary term. It basically means we study everybody's life, regardless if they're considered successful or not successful. And that is something that I think is so important for all of us, is because we all have a lesson to learn and a lesson to teach. So that's one thing I really want us to understand, is we're all growing and learning together in this journey of life. And so it's going to be an exciting time. One thing I really, when Rock was talking to me, he was like, well, what would you like to speak on? And there's a few topics that I really like to focus on, but this one specifically I think is really important. So it's really just the concept of streamlining our own lives. Did you know, and as you're probably going to think like I did, less than 2% of people can actually multitask. And so like I said, you're like, well, I can multitask.
So let's break down multitasking.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. Okay, good. So multitasking itself is doing more than one thing at one time. The way they quantified it or measured it was, if I do one thing by itself, and they measured how efficient I am, my efficacy rate, let's say 1 to 100. So if I do something and I'm fully focused and committed, I did it at 100%. But if I do two things at one time, and they measured how efficient am I, how fast did I do it, and how efficient was it? So when they took those metrics and those markers, they realized that less than 2% of people can actually do that. So it's, like I said, we all are like, well, I'm probably in the less than 2% of people, but unfortunately we're not. So my question right now is, all of you listeners or viewers right now, how many of you are multitasking? And so no, you're not in trouble. This is not like a pop quiz. No, but the point is, because I do it all the time too. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine today. I was preparing for this, and I was like, "Oh, my workouts have been really, really good. I've been there for 2.5 hours." And he was like, "Why are you there so long?" I was like, "Well, I'm working out." And he said, "Well, it doesn't sound like it's really doing anything." And I had to think about it. I was like, "That's actually really true. It's not that I'm being efficient with it. I'm just there a long time." And it just made me chuckle as I'm talking about this today. So going back to the multitasking part. So we multitask the different roles that we have in life. For example, I'm a radio host. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a dog owner. So I have all these different roles that I have in life. And just like you, we all do so many things, and many of you do it very, very well. So this is not this is a show more to help you do it even better, more efficient. So we want to look at it in that respect. So when we look at all the different things that we do, if someone were to follow you around and kind of do like a checklist as well, how efficient do you think you are? For some of you who are business owners, or some of you who are parents, when you are engaging with perhaps your staff or your child, but then somebody else says something, how more efficient or how much more productive do you think you could be if you could immediately transition into the role of the next thing you're supposed to do? You'd all be pretty good at that. If I were to say, give me a job description of one of the things you do. For example, what would you say your job description is? What would you say you do? But right now, what is the job description?
Right now?
Yeah.
Facilitating this call and making sure that I'm the link between the tribe and you.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So if someone outside of the show were to maybe knock on your door or something, it would automatically make you do that while trying to do this as well. And it can be a little overwhelming because you're like, oh goodness, I need to do this as well. Right. The point is that when we can recognize what each of the job descriptions are, every single thing we do, then we have to ask ourselves, am I doing that? If I were to be rated in my annual review that we've all had in our life, how well would I be? What would my metrics be? How would they say I'm really good at it? Or do they say I'm a little distracted? Am I not focused on what I'm supposed to do? And my whole point in asking that question is, when we take stock in what it is we're doing, we take stock in what we're supposed to be doing, sometimes we've done it for so long that we forget that we're not really growing in that role. We're just doing the role or going on autopilot. And of course, many times it makes sense that we do that. But as all you people who are interested in self-help, the way to always ask yourself, the way to grow with self-help is to simply ask yourself, what am I learning about myself right now? In the job description that James is doing right now, how focused is he? How committed is he to this? So in the same thing with you as a listener, what is your job description? So take a couple seconds to internally ask yourself that. What is my job description right now? And what is it I want to learn from this person? So when you ask yourself that, it puts you in the role of, okay, now I have an agenda. And with this agenda, now I have to make sure I'm in this job description to effectively pay attention to what James has to say. So when you do those types of things, it allows you to fully focus on something. So since we can't multitask, it's really multitask, we want to really put ourselves in the role of that. Many times when we, let's say, leave work and we go home, we forget that during that drive home, that's a wonderful time for transition. When we don't fully transition from one role to another, and the drive home is a really good time to do that. When we don't effectively do that, then all of a sudden when we come home, probably not effectively, and I keep using that word way too much, we're probably not as focused on the role of the spouse or the role as a roommate or the role as whatever, or the parent, as we could be. And so that's one of the difficulties we have when we lump too many things together. We cause our emotions to be murky. We allow our thoughts to be clouded. We're not able to fully exist and thrive and grow in each thing we do. So that's one thing I really want us to focus on is how can you create these job descriptions in everything you do. So I don't necessarily think you need to write it down every single time, but when you go into a new event, you have to understand the role that you're going into. You have to understand the personality. James, the person, when off camera, off radio, is the same person, but the way I interact in the world is going to be slightly different because it's a different role that I'm in. The same personality is there, but what I say, how I say it is going to be slightly different because the job descriptions are slightly different. So how effective do you think it would be for each of you to be able to do that in such a way where you can fully 100% give attention, give detail to every single thing you do? We've all heard of the concept of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a wonderful term. It's created actually through the Buddhist philosophy, which is amazing. Mindfulness just simply means how focused are you on what it is you want to do? How focused are you on what's literally in front of you? We have, in my field, there's different ways to help people. So if I'm struggling with anxiety or struggling with things internally, I use my 5 senses to pull myself out of my head. And when I do that, then it decreases the anxiety or anxious feelings, moves me to my external side or external self, which then helps me modulate. And vice versa, if I'm overwhelmed, let's say in a crowd or something, what I do is that I use my internal self-talk to pull myself back in. And so that allows you to the fluidity of how you can really allow your external self and internal self to really find that barometer, that sweet spot. So it's the same thing when you are doing something, how focused or mindful can you be to say, I'm going to use my 5 senses right now, I guess maybe 2 senses. I'm going to listen and I'm going to watch James. And so that when you use 2 senses, 2 out of 5, obviously the more you use, the more connected you are, but 2 out of the 5 allows you to be fully mindful much more than just listening to this on a podcast or just listening or just seeing this and not hearing my voice.
I have a question for you.
I'm sorry?
Quick question for you.
Okay.
So how does someone know? Most of us are kind of like ingrained in what we do every day. Mm-hmm. And we just built those habits to just get in the car, get the coffee, get to the work, listen to this, sit down in our seat, kind of do their thing. How does someone extract themselves from their daily habits to realize that they've been multitasking for 10 years?
Wonderful question. What I always help people realize is that however you start your day is indicative of how your day is going to go. If I start my day 5 minutes late and all of a sudden I'm rushing out the door, and all of a sudden there's traffic, and then I'm getting to work or getting to my office. I've started my day in a very chaotic, very rushed type of way. Morning rituals are one of the most important things that we can each give ourselves as a gift to be able to create that mindful awareness of what it is I'm going to do. When you start your day in a planned, methodical way, it allows you to be in control and in charge of what you're going to do. Now, of course, we all have outliers in our day of how we're going to interact with someone or perhaps do something that we weren't expecting to do. But the point is that when you can start your day saying, all right, this is what's on my agenda. This is where I need to be. Or this is where I'm going to be. When you understand that and have planned for that, and I say this in a vacuum because life isn't always like that, but when you can plan that out, that then says, okay, James, you have a radio, you're on the radio at this time, you're on TV at this time, or you're out with your friends at this time, you're going to the beach at this time, whatever it may be. I know, okay, there's a lot that I get to do that I'm going to enjoy, but I get to be the one to say, what does that look like? So the problem is that many times, all of us, and I've been guilty of it as well, when we don't plan out our day in a very mindful way, it does cause us to just go on autopilot. It does cause us to just do what we've always done. And unfortunately, if we don't have some of that awareness, don't realize that there's probably some mediocrity that's set out in our life, that's been created in our life because we've done it on autopilot for so long. So one of the questions to ask yourself is, if you ever hear yourself saying, there's got to be more to life, I can't imagine myself doing this again, unfortunately, there's some mediocrity in life. So we go back to, how can I do what I'm doing, but not do it just on autopilot? How can I do it so that I'm now more effective in doing that? And that goes back to me having you ask the question, perhaps, and when you debrief how you did and whatever role you're playing is, what did I learn about myself? And a lot of times you'll be surprised that you may not have been as connected or committed or even excited or even want to do what you're doing. And that's life. But it's also when you can be aware of the nuances of your personality, the nuances of how distracted you are, the nuances of how perhaps you have really good eye contact and perhaps you don't have good eye contact. Those types of awareness allows you on the other side to be your own person to give yourself that internal critique. Because just like a boss were to do that to you, you definitely want to get better so that you can get a reward, which is a raise. And it's the same type of thing in life when you can critique yourself in a very helpful way, not in a negative way, but in a helpful way. It helps you realize, oh, James, I didn't realize you had a blind spot there. Gosh, you really get annoyed quickly with this person. Or you did a really good job interacting with that person. When you debrief like that, it allows you to tweak it. And then that's the great part about self-development, is you get to tweak it. I don't like to think in good or bad, in this polarized thinking, right or wrong. I like to think in what's healthy for me. Because as I grow and develop as a healthy person, what's healthy for me today on my self-development journey, maybe 3 years from now, it won't look healthy, but because I've grown. And so that's the whole concept with you as well, or all of us, is what are we doing to continually ask ourselves, how am I growing and developing? And that goes back to in each job description we create for ourselves, how are we being mindful of that so that we can evolve so we can be the best employee or the best business owner, the best spouse, the best friend, the best gym person, whatever it may be. Those types of things allow for that quick little snapshot to check in to say, how am I doing right now?
So quick question for you.
Yeah.
So go back a little bit to something that may have served you back in, 2 years ago, may not serve you today if you're on a nice growth trajectory in your life. So like, how does someone check in to say, and this could be like how you start your morning, and this could also be your spouse or your job. So it's small and or really large. So how do you go back and again, extract yourself from your life for a second and go, whoa, hang on, these habits, these things, this is not serving me at this point in my life anymore, and then make those changes? Like, how would you recommend someone do that?
What I typically have people do is we use what's called the graph of fulfillment, the graph of self-development. And what you do is you break down your life in as many categories as possible. I'm all about compartmentalization. I think compartmentalization is one of the most important things because the more you can compartmentalize something, the less you multitask. So if you can break your life down into as many possible things, so you have, let's say your work, you have your health, you have your wellness, you have your finances, your spouse, your relationships, your spirituality, whatever it is you can think of, the more of those you have, the more successful you'll be to be able to measure this. So that's what you're going to have on the horizontal line. And on the vertical line, you'll have tick marks 1 to 10. And what you'll do is then you can do a snapshot of, let's say, the past 6 months, or you can make it smaller. Let's say the past 3 months or the past week. And what you do then is you go through and say, how developed do I think I am? And so it's a subjective measurement But as you continually do that, you'll see where you're doing really well, and you'll see other areas where you may not be doing so well. And so that's a really good snapshot for you to have that. So then you can do it again, the next metric, which will be another 6 months or whatever you've decided it's going to be. And then you'll see how things move. And then that is going to be your measurement of this is growing for me. Now, each thing we do, we have different ways in which it's going to manifest. For me, I like to think I'm this incredibly nice, patient person, but I find, and I'll be honest here, in the morning when I am multitasking, with my coffee, walking my dog, or listening to something, if my dog randomly pulls on the leash and I spill my coffee, well, don't have the best patience in that moment. I don't get mad, but I laugh now. But before I'd be like, oh, and I get so annoyed because coffee's all over the place. But the point is that I can be so patient with my patients and on everything else I do. But when it comes to something silly like that, if that was a blind spot, now I know, okay, well, I have a lesson to learn in patience in this particular sector. So it's the same type of thing. You'll find that you're really successful in a lot of ways, but when you can use the snapshot, you'll see the different areas that may be slightly off, or maybe some blind spots you just didn't realize that you had.
Love it. So there's a ton of questions right now. Are you cool with taking a couple?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Tribe, you guys are doing awesome. So, all right, let me read a couple of these. So from Matt Burton. So Matt asks, how can we focus and maintain situational awareness to our surroundings simultaneously?
So just so I understand that correctly, so the internal self-talk, as well as being aware of how you're being affected or what's happening externally.
Yeah, it sounds like, how can we focus and maintain focus on something and then maintain situational awareness to our surroundings. So focus on something, maybe and then keeping yourself safe or whatever that might be. Matt, put a little more description in there. We'll get it.
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. Thank you for asking that. One thing I always do is I always have an internal dialogue with myself. It's funny. I always tell my patients, or just people that my listeners on my show, is when you can have an internal dialogue with yourself, or even an external dialogue when you're by yourself, it actually helps you recognize between the different types of voices. I use the word very loosely, people. The different types of thoughts that go through our mind. We can have a very logical thought, and then we can have a very irrational thought. So as I'm talking to you right now, I hear that internal dialogue within myself that's saying, James, you're doing a great job. You're doing really well here. Slow down here. You're talking too fast. Those types of things I'm always hearing. So it's the same thing with yourself. When you are in a situation, you always want to give yourself that positive self-affirmation. That healthy talk that you're experiencing is going to help you be aware of what's happening, but it's also going to give you the nuances of perhaps the empathy level that you can engage with others, or this feels a little unsafe for me. I'm going to pull back. It feels unsafe, perhaps emotionally, but it doesn't mean I'm physically unsafe. And so that internal dialogue that you can create with yourself as you listen to it really gives you that buffer to be present, but to also be somewhat reserved, so you can have that introspection. When we don't do that, we get lost in the reactivity, and then the reactionary aspects are what causes us to go into what's called the thinking error. And that was one of the things I was going to talk about a little bit later. I'll say it real fast. So when we are in a conversation with someone, when we are doing something, if we're not multitasking the role, if we're not, focused on what we're doing, all of a sudden we're not going to hear what was said. We're going to interpret it differently. And so the problem with that when it comes to communication is if I'm doing 100 things and someone says something to me, I'm like, wait, what did you say? And all of a sudden I heard it in the way that was different than what they said. Because I wasn't focused, I've all of a sudden created this whole new chaotic turmoil within myself. And there's all these different thinking errors that cause us to look at the world in a different way, which then causes us, once again, to have that internal self-talk, throw us for a loop, and then we find ourselves in a very unhealthy, tenable situation.
Got it. Awesome. Next one from Rel. Hey, Rel.
Hey.
So Rel is asking, what keeps you grounded during times of stress, and what advice hold on, let me read this again. What keeps you grounded during times of stress, and what advice could you lend to others to stay on course?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Actually, on my academy that I have, I actually did a class specifically on that called When All Hell Breaks Loose. And I wrote that class because all hell was breaking loose in my life. From the biggest things to the smallest things, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lesson here, and I'm going to capitalize on it. I'm going to make money off of this. But the whole point is you have to look at what was versus what is. When I look at my life, I can look at all the things that I've experienced, all the things I've overcome. And so when I'm looking at what's happening right this second, I can look at some really difficult things I experienced. And I can remind myself, James, you're here today. You took another breath and another breath and another breath. And you did the hardest thing that you could ever imagine, and you're here. So the first thing is to look at perspective. We all have experienced so many things, but when we get so caught up in it, we have this myopic, or in other words, just really close-sided, I guess, perspective. And in that, we forget that maybe a year ago, 5 years ago, we went through something that was so painful, we thought we could never get through it, but we did. And so this current situation is a little bit more difficult. And then what you want to do is you want to say, when did I feel fear? When did I feel anxiety? When did I feel hopeless, this despondency, this despair? When did I feel that before? I may not have felt it to the extreme that I feel today, but I felt it before. What did I do? How did I find my way out of it? Because when we look at what we can do versus what we cannot do, that's then when we have this ability to look at our life in a proactive way, as opposed to, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? There's nothing worse than having those thoughts. What am I going to do? Because we've lost sight that we've done it before. We've experienced it before. We've overcome it before. And if you're struggling to find it, because remember, everyone has to experience a sense of grief. So when we get blindsided about something, and we all do, there's a moment of grief that kicks in. And when it kicks in, that's when we have to acknowledge it. I can say, James, this is really scary. You are really overwhelmed. I have no idea what you're going to do. But, so there's first parts of self-validation. That but part is now the proactive part. You experienced this, X, Y, and Z at this time in your life. This is what you did. You're going to do that again. Or you took another breath. You're going to take another breath. So when we do the self-validation, that allows for us to then use that internal self-talk to then find our way and our hope and our ability to move forward into the new chapter of our life. Sometimes we have this concept of, oh my gosh, my life was so good, and then the situation happened, and all of a sudden my life is bad. So just like I was saying before, I don't like to think in good and bad, this polarized thinking. What I like to think of, my life was, now my life is. When you separate those two things, you don't look at yesterday was good, today is bad. Because when you do that, you've completely limited yourself from your opportunity to say, it's different. What can I do instead of what can I not do? I did a few shows like that with people. Anyway, so we talked the specifics about what's called radical acceptance. So radical acceptance is a fancy, $5 million word, which basically says you focus on the facts as they are today. Doesn't matter if you like it, you appreciate it, you approve of it, let someone off the hook. It just simply means these are the facts. These are the facts. What do I do? How do I do this? And that's the struggle that many people have, is we look at what was and compare it to what is. They're not the same. They never will be the same. They are different. So when you can separate those two things, now it turns our focus to the future. And that is our ability to then say, now what can I do?
So this is more like being present.
Mindfulness.
And mindfulness and really surrender to what is in the moment. And there's a lot of different courses that talk about, you name a self-help course and it talks about not bringing the past into the present and making your decisions based on the now versus what happened to you 20 years ago when you were 5, whatever it is. So that's what you're talking about?
I am. The only difference, I'm using my past as a launch pad to say, well, how did I overcome something before? What did I do? Okay. I think sometimes we all have, I know we all have the opportunity to say what was in my life doesn't necessarily mean it has to define me today. We've all heard that before. A situation in our life doesn't define us unless we want it to. An event is simply an event. It's not who we are. It's just what we've experienced.
So we make choices from that.
Yeah, exactly. But, kind of piggybacking off of what you said is when we have this, when we look to our future, all of a sudden we have what's called, another $5 million word, emotional forecasting. What that basically means is you take the snapshot of what I'm experiencing right now. And what I'm experiencing, all of a sudden I forecast it to my future and say, this is my life. This is how it's going to be. You don't know that. What we do know is right now you're hurting, you're struggling. Well, how did you get over it before? And then we'll figure out what to do 5 minutes from now. And so anytime you think about your future, if it causes anxiety or causes some type of overwhelming emotion, you've thought too far out in the future. You simply bring your thoughts back to the time frame when you don't feel that. Because when you don't feel that, that comes from a place of strength. That comes from a place of productivity, of being proactive and looking at your future. That may just be, you can only think out 2 minutes from now. It's totally fine. You thought out 2 minutes and you were in control of those 2 minutes. And then the more you do that, the more you create that endurance. And that endurance gives you 5 minutes, gives you a week, it gives you 6 months, gives you a year. But anytime you make any decision or look forward in your life, if there's anxiety, you just simply bring back the time frame and it helps you look at what you can do as opposed to what you cannot do.
Here's another $5 million word: neuroplasticity.
Yes. Yes.
But what you're talking about is building tiny, tiny habits over small periods of time that become bigger habits over bigger periods of time. It's kind of like meditation. Don't try and go for 20 minutes. Start for 30 seconds, then 40, then 45, then start at 30, and just work your way up as your brain starts to rewire itself to build new habits.
Well, it goes back to the whole sense of multitasking. If I'm multitasking a 5-minute increment and I can't do it because I have anxiety, well, I'm not fully focused on the first minute. I'm focused on the 5th minute and I haven't done the first minute. So it kind of goes back to the whole circle of life here. It comes back around to the multitasking part. When you can or you can bring it back to the smallest component, the compartmentalization, it allows you to be more successful because you're in control of it as opposed to it controlling you.
So there's a question from Alan Murray about multitasking, and he's asking, when multitasking, what tips do you have to segregate tasks so that they do not bleed over to one another?
Great question. Goes back to one's job description. When we prioritize what is healthy, what's important for us, that then helps us say, this is not really in the job description right now. So it helps you kind of narrow things down in a very convergent way. In other words, like a funnel or that cone, which helps you say, wait, this isn't really relevant right now. So when you can kind of prioritize things like that, it helps you say, this is what I need to do. This is what I don't need to do. And that's just a simple mindfulness. It kind of goes back into your head of, let me look at this. Let me prioritize this within the 5 minutes that I have, within the job description that I have right now. If it's slightly outside or like an outlier of some sort, probably can be relegated to a different time or to a different role.
Got it. One more question. Jordan, I see your question here. However, I don't understand it. I'm going to ask it real quick and see if you understand it, James.
Okay.
So Jordan's asking, how would you educate someone to the understanding of healthy versus black and white?
Okay, great question. All right, so when we find that someone asks things or says things and they have this polarized version, going back to what I said earlier, those thinking errors, there's actually 15 common thinking errors that we all experience. Anytime there's an internal chaos within ourselves, or anytime there's a conflict with someone when we're talking to them, one of us has used one of these thinking errors. And one of those thinking errors are called polarized thinking. In other words, black or white. So the way a thinking error works is this: when whatever we perceive to be true, so my perception determines what I feel. My feelings then tell my body what to do. So what a thinking error is kind of like a lens that goes over your eye, your mind's eye. And when it kind of skews, it puts that film over there. So all of a sudden I see the situation as it is based off of one of those thinking errors, which then causes my emotion to be slightly skewed, which then causes my reaction or my response to be totally out of proportion. And we've all experienced that before. Like, where did that come from? So it goes back to the same thing as well. When you hear people say those different things, you want to ask them in a very gentle way, could there be more than that? And I know that kind of sounds a little trite, but when you only allow them to look at one side, we forget the whole aspect of it. So sometimes when I hear people say, James, this person, they always do this to me, I just simply say, they always do that. And sometimes they don't hear it, but when they hear that slight little suggestion, like, well, most of the time they do. I'm like, well, tell me when they haven't done it. And so when you start to focus on a slightly skew it or twist it a little bit for them or have them hear it differently, it allows them to say, okay, maybe it's not that. So it's really important for each of us as we're on this journey of self-development. When we hear people use black and white thinking in a very gentle, loving way, you kind of want to help them understand that maybe a little bit more. And that's just by gently, maybe gently suggesting that there's another way to do that. And so in that, that's when people start to hear that. And it goes back to when you do that, you're actually creating a boundary for yourself. Boundaries always keep us safe. So when you can help people hear things in a slightly different way, that it's not always black and white, they know that every time they come to you, Jordan, all right, Jordan is going to make me think in a non-binary way. So, okay, crap, how am I going to do this? So Jordan, that's a great way for you to be able to create those boundaries within yourself with the people with whom you associate, because they know every single time you gently suggest that there may be more, it starts to create a dynamic between you all. And then they start to know, okay, I have to be more mindful.
Got it. All right, 2 more in this round.
Okay.
So Britt Taylor, hey Britt, is asking, what are some tricks you use to snap yourself into mindfulness and being present?
One time, or many times, we all have this inability we get lost in our head. Let me back up. I would actually do this more from being able to work out and bring yourself in. What I mean by that is when we can really plan that out, we then know what mindfulness feels like. But sometimes if we haven't really practiced it enough, Like, oh, I'm mindful. And then we think that while we're multitasking all these other things. So when we can actually create a mindful activity that we do within our week sometime, or whatever it may be, but you planned it out, it's in your schedule, it's in your calendar. What I have people do, and this is the best one I think all of us can do, is called a mindful walk. What a mindful walk is you just simply go outside, don't have your electronics, and just turn your electronics off, and you try and use each one of your five senses and really experience that when you're walking. So as we know, our five senses, they work from the farthest to the most internal. So you have your sense of sight, your sense of hearing, your sense of smell, sense of touch, your sense of taste. Did I get the last one? I think I did five. You get the general idea.
Yeah.
So you go out. So the way you do that is you want to start with your eyes. Then you want to go, what do I hear? So when you can use all five senses, what it does is then you practice that because you're aware of listening, and then you're mindfully aware, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? And then the next part, which is really difficult, but this makes you be more mindful, is then you try and like link those together. What do I see and hear at the same time? What do I feel? And so as you can link all your five senses together, that creates a 100% amazing opportunity to have a complete holistic version of mindfulness. So that's a good way to do that, where you lump all that together, who you are, because you are truly aware of that. That is one thing I have people do, because once they can train their minds to be able to focus on one thing, that then they can use that to then transition to, I'm really annoyed with this person right now. How can I be mindful of my response? How can I make sure that as my blood pressure is rising, I don't yell at them? That's a mindful awareness of how you can be proactive in what you do. So one of the things I would have you do is practice on the bigger end. And then as you're able to then train yourself in each moment, and then it's easier to snap yourself into it. But to piggyback off of that as well, is I have people actually create like this, I call them random check-ins. They're really not random, but you check in, like say every 3 hours on your phone and your smartphone, you turn on your alarm, and every 3 hours it turns on. So what you do is you have two different scales, a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the best I feel emotionally. And then 1 is the worst I feel emotionally. And then the other scale is 10, how is my body feeling? Like 10 is the best and 1 is the worst I'm feeling. So what you do is when you have this check-in, you all of a sudden say, okay, emotionally, I'm kind of low here, but my body's really high, so therefore I can do all the things I need to do. But why in this past 3 hours, why am I so upset? Because unfortunately, we're multitasking and didn't reset the different roles that we had, and we lumped them together. And in doing that, we've now all of a sudden have our scale really low, our emotional scale low. We didn't let it go. So when you can start to check in like that, it allows you to automatically do that without having to randomly set an alarm on your phone, because that then says, okay, James, how are you feeling right now? Wow, you got really, this person hurt your feelings. What are you gonna do about it? So it goes back to a place of proactivity. And so when you can ask yourself those questions, it allows you to then find whatever version of mindfulness you have, if that's a mantra, if that's a thought of something, if that is just simply breathing, many ways in which you can do that. But when you can train yourself to do these internal scales, it allows you to reset all the time. So therefore, as soon as you get a spike of some type of emotion, or as soon as you get this random thought or this thought that hurts you, you can immediately say, what am I going to do with that? Because when we don't have that internal awareness, unfortunately, it causes us to be reactive. And so if I'm upset with something that happened at 9 a.m. and at noon, I'm yelling at people that it's totally not rational. I've used one of those thinking errors. Well, I didn't check in with myself enough to let that go. And that's when it comes back to the multitasking part. When you make that transition to every single thing you do, you learn how to let it go. You learn how to breathe through it, if you will. You learn how to say, that doesn't serve me now. I'm now in this different role. I can bring it in, but I know I'm not going to be successful with it.
So can we talk about emotion for a second?
Yes.
I have a feeling, myself included in the past.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Emotion has been and is, for a lot of people, a main driver. Mm-hmm. Emotion spikes from something in the past and they bring it to the present moment and then react. Mm-hmm. So I've noticed, and being a psychotherapist, I really want your opinion on this. What kind of tools can people use that are very simple, such as the CBT chart, to understand and register emotions that they're feeling in a current moment, and that like breaks the cycle? And then also they can see like, well, I'm feeling dread. Are you really feeling dread? What evidence do you have? You know what I mean? And if anybody doesn't know what that CBT chart is, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. Would you recommend something like that to kind of break someone's pattern?
I think that's great. I think the more information we all have, the more successful we're going to be. What he was talking about is these types of charts There's many ways in which you can do them. It's what it really does is it looks at the situation. What was the precipitating event? What was the emotions you were experiencing, and what percentage? Let's say 1 to 100%. Right. It's really kind of interesting because we as humans, we have the ability to feel more things at one time, and that's what's called a dialectic. A dialectic is another fancy word, which basically means you can experience diverse emotions at the same time, and they both be experienced 100% of the time. For example, if someone dies and you're at a funeral, you're really sad, but you think of a funny memory and you start laughing, well, you're still sad at the same time. So the problem is that we can feel these emotions, but we're probably not feeling them they're probably merged together. So you think you're feeling one emotion that's at 100%, but you're probably feeling two emotions, which you've linked together. You know, it's interesting. All emotions, defensive emotions, if you will, that's what they're called, defensive, are really more, it comes back to the fight or flight. If we have the fight, flight, or freeze, most people forget about the freeze part. That process within ourselves was created, obviously, to keep us safe, so we're not eaten by tigers, saber-tooth tigers. But now as adults, or now as in this world now, we don't have that. But the problem is we still have that process, that response rate within us. And so now we take a word that was said to us, I now feel threatened. I now feel I need to run, or I need to shut down, or I need to just leave, whatever it may be. So we still have that process, but what we do is then we take that emotion and then it becomes on the offensive. Anger is used in a defensive way. It protects us. But as soon as I'm safe and I have that awareness, if I'm now being offensive with it, I've now taken what's a healthy emotion and moved it and expressed it in an unhealthy way. So anytime we have an emotion that goes to the offense rather, you've unfortunately used one of these thinking errors, which causes you to then, unfortunately, probably apologize later, but it's caused you to have this reactive state where then you then put yourself in a place that is the unhealthy version of you. So if you want to have this CBT chart list, which is great, you know, when I used to work with little kids, we'd have like little face charts. You know, they have the different expressions if they didn't know the words, but it works just as well. So whatever you want to do to understand what you're feeling in a healthier way allows you to say, wait, am I really feeling despair right now? Probably not despair. It's probably anxiety and a little uncertainty. So yeah, that may sound like wordsmithing or semantics, but they're slightly different. So when you can understand what that is, then it comes back to, all right, I just created the worst case scenario in my life. So worst case scenario, I'm never going to talk to this person again, or this person just attacked me, or I just lost my job. I'm never going to get, you know, another job. When we go to the worst case scenario, what that does is it then causes our emotions to be in the worst case scenario. So when our emotions are disproportionate to what is happening, we've used one of these thinking errors and cognitive distortions that causes us to look at this situation in an unhealthy way, which then, once again, thoughts determine feelings, feelings determine actions. So if you realize your emotions are really high, you've probably looked at the situation in a slightly skewed way. It's really interesting because in the English language, the word belief, the antonym to that, in other words, the opposite word is truth. It's really quite fascinating because what we think, what we believe to be true isn't true. And the reason why it's not is because we don't have enough information. The more information you have, the more you're going to understand what's really happening. And then it allows you to then respond in a more healthy, proactive way, as opposed to going back to the offensive version of your emotions, which then causes you to be offensive with your actions, which then causes more chaos and turmoil. So it goes back to, you have to look at, what do I believe is happening? And if I can create that slight buffer to say, but is it really happening? Or many times we judge others by what they do, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. I can't believe they yelled at me. I can't believe they said that to me. But even though you may have done the same thing, but you meant to be nice, you meant to be benevolent, but it came out in the wrong way.
That's interesting. Can you say that again?
We judge others by their behaviors. We judge ourselves by our intentions.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, then we forget that people's expression doesn't mean that's what they meant. If it's not what they meant, more than likely, we probably heard something different. And then it's up to us to determine what we're going to do with it.
Well, usually you have two people hearing different things, even though reality is here, but that person heard it from their past and you heard it from your past in that present moment. Mm-hmm. And so then you react based on wherever your emotional intelligence level is at that point, probably like 8 years old or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then we just continue to perpetuate that. So in the morning, the time is flying by, and I want to get a couple more questions. And so in the morning, what can people do? Let's say somebody who's a aspiring entrepreneur, somebody that's like just hates their job. and they're just tired of this life, but they need to get into action. A lot of those people are in this tribe now, and they're using this tribe and the curriculum to get themselves to a different level, to a new part of life, whatever it might be. What can people do first thing in the morning? Because obviously you mentioned that earlier. The morning time is the most important time, how you start your day, how you set your day up. But what can people do the night before? We have something called the Sunday System for Success, where we use it on Sunday nights to plan out the entire week for success and all the things we want to do. But what would you recommend somebody do on, let's say, like tonight, before they go to bed, to then set an intention for the morning, to then get up, achieve that, and then continue to move forward so they're building positive momentum?
Well, one of the things is it's so important to debrief. When you can close your day asking yourself, what did I learn about myself today? What were some things, some highs of the day that I'm really very proud of myself? And what are some things where I can learn and grow? Because I didn't honor myself the way I could have. I didn't understand it. So that's something, just to have that debrief to help you understand what's going well and what's not going well. And so that then gives you the understanding of, okay, if I tend to be annoyed with this person, I tend to maybe struggle at work at a certain time of day, I now know that at this time of the day, this is what I need to do. Either I do these scales that I talked about, or I can go for a walk, or I can just, check out for a few minutes and, call someone, whatever it may be. But you want to look at where were the highs and lows of your day. And then that helps you create the snapshot for tomorrow, because then you know how to kind of modulate that and moderate that. And it helps you be more successful in what you're going to do.
So journaling.
I'm sorry?
Journaling.
Yeah, journaling, of course. Yeah, journaling, looking at your gratitude, gratitude itself. I mean, that creates a whole new benevolent look at the world. And it comes from a place of what's going well, just like positive psychology, as opposed to what is not going well. When we focus on what is not going well, then that's all we're going to focus on. So that is something, journaling is an amazing, wonderful opportunity. If you want to go a little bit deeper, actually try journaling with your other hand, because it actually unlocks a little bit of your brain. Because in a very basic way, we have the left side and right side. The left side's more analytical, the right side's the more creative side. I say it in a very basic way, but that's essentially how the world looks at it. So if I typically write with one hand, if you switch it over to the other one, it doesn't matter how well you write, you actually hear and realize that your brain slightly hears it in a slightly different way, and you might be surprised at what comes out.
I love that. I've never heard that before. That's awesome. I just wrote that down.
Oh, good. With your other hand.
So don't say any more questions right now. I wanted to ask you, books. We've got like 10 minutes left or 15 minutes left. So I just wanted to kind of throw something in there. What books do you recommend? What books do you read? Do you go crazy, deep psychology stuff, or do you go crazy, personal development? Like, where do you recommend people go for, just to start building? And then people that are more advanced, where do they go? What would you recommend?
Yeah, because I do this all the time, I hate to admit this, I don't read like I used to. It's been a really long time since I do a lot of reading. I've been blessed because I have so many guests on my show that I get their books all the time. And so I get to review all the books with them all the time. So I get to do that. So that's kind of my self-help journey. There's so many, you totally put me in the spot here, so I'm laughing. Usually I'm all ready for a thing. I'm like, oh no, you're going to say it. I don't have a specific one. Obviously there's so many greats out there. And I think any book that helps you stop and look at what's going well in your life and how to really analyze it in a way that's different than you currently have seen it, it's going to allow you to grow. And so I think that, yes, there are so many books out there, but when a book can cause you to stop and say, why am I continually doing this? Or how can I do something a little bit different? It doesn't matter if it's this earth-shattering book or this earth-shattering situation that comes out of it. The point is you'll learn something. And that is the most important thing, because that is the journey of self-development. So that's kind of what I would say.
Okay. And then, so I've got a question here. Thavy's asking, what do we do if we don't even know what the problem is, such as travel anxiety? Those mental and emotional thoughts come from somewhere, but the physical reactions are stronger, and it makes it difficult to understand where it's coming from.
Great question. So when things are disproportionate, it is often difficult, because if we try and do like a deep-seated dive into something, like I have no idea where that comes from, what we have to then look at is, what is my present moment? Because if we're trying, let's say flights, if people are afraid to fly, there's a lot of reasons why, but in the moment we have to look at, once again, what can I do? This is something to put perhaps on my my agenda to look at tonight, and I can see what was a causality, where did I lump things together throughout the day, which caused me to have this disproportionate response. So great question. It goes back to the multitasking. If we don't have these internal check-ins, which allow us to let things go, then we will have all of these thoughts and all these emotions lumped together. And then it randomly, not really, but randomly expresses itself at this other time. We're like, where did that come from? So when we can reset every single 3 hours or every hour, and then the more expeditious you get with this, the more you can do it right away, but it allows you to let things go. So if something's a deep-seated thing that you continually experience, it's probably more deep than something that happened just the day itself. Real quick, and this totally blew my mind. I had someone on my show, Dr. Jacob Lieberman, amazing man. You have to hear his show. He has this whole concept of how I don't want to say too much because it's totally tangential, but he talks about how the light spectrum actually affects us and it shows up in our everyday life. When I was talking to him on the show about, we do systematic desensitization for people who have anxiety for flights. And what that basically means is you go through the flight process of getting ready, of packing your suitcase and the whole thing. And then when the anxiety comes up, you deal with it. He was like, James, it's probably not the flight. It's probably the color spectrum blue that they have an aversion to. And I was like, oh my gosh, literally blew my mind. I've never heard anything like that. So a lot of times, it's not a conscious thought that we have, or perhaps something we realize. Perhaps there's something in a very visceral, very primal way that we don't know what it is. But the more awareness you have when you see that it presents itself, the more successful you'll be to be able to process it and say, okay, I don't know everything that happened, but I know that when I'm in this particular situation, I get annoyed or get frustrated. So kind of what you said before is you want to now look at the day before. If I'm going to do this, how can I prepare so that I don't have this response? Or how can I avoid that? What can I do to circumvent that? So we want to look at, once again, what you can do versus what you cannot do. And that was what will really help you through that.
I love that. Can you go back to the blue?
I knew that.
I really want to know what, just a little bit deeper into that, because that's interesting. Is it the blue light of the plane or the sky or what?
So, well, I brought up something about flying in the show, and I talked about just the people I work with, and that's what they struggle with. And so he was saying how more than likely the person who's has that aversion to flying, it's not about the flying itself or in the plane, it's about the color blue spectrum that they see peripherally and how that affects their nervous system, how that affects them overall. So real quickly with him, and I mean, I can only say what I know from my show, but he was talking about, he has 13 different light spectrums of glasses that you wear. And when you try them on, you can recognize the visceral response that your body has, which is the aversion towards it. And then he helps you sit with that color for a certain period of time. And then you transition to the lighter version of that until pretty soon with the color at the white spectrum, if you will, the clear spectrum, and which then helps you remove that. So therefore, wherever that color spectrum is, allows you to let that go. I had a real quick analogy of that, or example of that, is I was working with a patient who hated her hair color, which is brown. And she couldn't figure it out. And it turns out, long story short, she didn't like the color brown because it reminded her of, without saying too much, it reminded her of a certain color when she was traumatized quite a bit. And so that brown reminded her of that. So every time she'd see the hair color brown, she would automatically, viscerally and subconsciously, and her body responded to that aversion of that color. So when we figured that out, of course, that's how the color brown manifested in her life, how she wanted to avoid it. So the color spectrum, really, it's very fascinating. Totally gonna plug my show. Go to jamesLifeology.com. Go to the radio directory there. You can scroll down to see, what is it called? Color preferences. I don't remember, something like color preferences with Dr. Jacob Lieberman, and you can hear that show.
Got it. Another question.
Yes.
What are 5 key tools that you've applied to your life in business, or maybe in business, that's helped you tremendously create the success you have today?
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. What I love is you said 5. And so I'm like, great, let me go with 5. So what I've done is, it's in everything we do, it comes down to this. And I'll just kind of break it down into maybe one point, which is broken down into a few. Anytime we want to make a decision in life, we automatically, and this goes back to what I said earlier, we make a decision based off of what we know today, as opposed to what I don't yet know. So what I've done, when I've created my platform, is I look at what can I do? What am I good at? You know, when I left private practice and I kind of started all this, I started to write a book. And in fact, I'm writing one now, but I was starting one then, and I was like, oh, and I got so lost, and I was it was so academic. And I'm like, this is so boring. I don't want to read it. So my point for me was, I was like, okay, well, I have a lot to say. I talk for a living. So I looked at the things that I could do as opposed to things I could not do. The problem that many people have is we have two different steps when it comes to decision making. Most people lump them together, and that's why we don't make a change, or that's why we don't do things that cause us to grow and develop. The first step, and this is the biggest step, is information gathering. I cannot stress that enough. How much information do you have about what it is you want to do? I knew what I wanted to do when it came down to, I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. Didn't know what it was, wherever I want to do it, and I wanted to be location independent. So that was my platform. And so I was like, okay, then what else can I do? So I looked at all the different aspects of my talent, of my skill set, things I enjoy, and I gathered information on each one of those things. How would it look if I were to merge these together? Or how would it look if I merged this together? How would it look if, and the picture got bigger and bigger. But if I were to say, I'm going to have the millions of listeners I have on my show today, I wouldn't have thought I could do that. I wouldn't have known. And because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'd be like, gosh, there's no way I could do that. So it goes back to, I did not have enough information. So for each step you make before this, you do the second part of that is the decision itself, yes or no. And that is what's going to help you, because if you try and make a decision based on your limited understanding now, probably won't make the healthiest decision. So you always want to look at this and even ask yourself, what more questions do we need? When you continually ask yourself that, you'll find that you're able to start to make progress. Now, some people may say, well, James, I never have enough information, so I'm never going to make a change. You can find that when you lump some things together, get some information, it leads you to, yes, this makes more sense. Yes, I'm going to do this. No, I don't feel like this is right. And so it's a slight nudge, which helps you navigate what makes sense for you. We actually have three brains, believe it or not. We have our normal brain, we have a heart brain, and we have our stomach brain, what's it called? The enteric brain? I'm sure one of you will correct me if
enteric.
So what it is so you have the our conscious mind, it's a logical mind that always works. Our heart is like, yes, it's like the feeling you have when you see like those little otters holding hands on Facebook. You're like, oh, it's amazing. That is what your heart is going to tell you. And of course, fortunately, our heart tells us a lot of that, and there's some relationship problems we can get in. But then you have the other part, that enteric brain, which is that gut, that visceral part of us, which is interesting. The majority of our serotonin that we have, which helps us with depression, it's that feel-good emotion, it's actually in our stomach, believe it or not. And so what you'll find is that in the stomach region, if we always say, I had this, I just knew it, my gut told me this, or I had this feeling, that is your enteric brain telling you what is healthy for you. So when you can have this mindful awareness of sitting with a thought, sitting with an emotion, sitting with a choice, waiting for it, and where do you physically feel it? And so wherever you physically feel it the most, and oftentimes you'll have that when you go to sleep and you wake up and something's just off, you just have this awareness. And that is one of your three brains, if you will, helping you kind of figure that out for yourself. So it goes back to gathering information, seeing how much information you have before you make the choice. And that's what's going to help you then decide what is in the next chapter. You're going to be able to kind of feel it when you can practice that more often, of where are you feeling it within your body? How is it helping you do that? And that can be more of a mindful meditation that you do, which helps you kind of understand how your mind, body, and spirit all links together. So I didn't give you 5, but hopefully that was a pretty good one to help you separate between what you don't know versus what you do know. Gathering information is the biggest thing you can do, and then decision-making comes from it.
5 minutes left. We just rolled through an hour. So did you plug your website by chance?
Probably a few times, but I haven't probably.
I'm just kidding.
I know, I'm shameful about it.
No, please do. So, actually, do you have any, I kind of just want to go back for 1 second with serotonin and the stuff that's present in the gut. Mm-hmm. And then the immune system there too, and kind of like the way that food acts on it. Do you want to speak at all on diet and how important diet is to gut health and subsequently mental health?
Yeah, I can. So when we look at, I don't know if I can do it in 5 minutes, but when, I'll just say really quick. When you look at, we've all seen the pyramid before. If I actually didn't see it on my site, you'll see the all aspects. So the spirit, mind, and body, that is essentially what we are. And so what I like to have people look at is, think of it like an arrowhead. You spin that arrowhead, whatever side of that you need is what's going to penetrate the thing you need. So when we're overwhelmed with something, I think it was Aurel that asked that question. We're overwhelmed with something, what do? And so I would spin that to my spirit. So James, you can do this. You got this. This is going to help you do this. My logical mind is going to give you the process of how to do that. And then my body is going to execute that. Whatever you put in your body, the same type of thing, whatever you put in your brain is going to be present. Whatever you put in your body is going to determine what your body does. And so we all try to be so mindful and aware, which is amazing. We're all doing that. But we always forget that the same type of thing, what we put ingest affects us just as much. Whatever you eat is going to be what you become, in the sense of if your gut flora and is destroyed, or it's not healthy, that's going to manifest itself in your body, which then affects your brain. So the circuitous route of your thoughts determine your feelings, determine what your body does, also can work in the backwards, or the reverse route. Whatever you put in your body all of a sudden gives you indigestion, which causes you to have certain thoughts, which then causes you to feel a certain way, which then your emotions then tell your body to do something. And then all of a sudden your body's telling yourself to do something else. And so it's this whole whack-a-mole of something is off and I just don't know what to do. So many times we all hear, yes, I can be mindful, I can do this, I can do that. But diet is probably one of the most important things we can do to be able to help ourselves. When we don't know what to do when it comes to dealing with things, what can you ingest that's actually healthy for you? When we work so much on our emotions and our mind, we forget that what is considered healthy for us. And we'll all have a slightly different parameters of what that looks like. Definitely recommend that each one of you go to a nutritionist. Majority of you who have insurance should cover that as well. But when you have that, it allows you to say, yes, I know that there's brain food, or I know that there's different types of heavy greens are going to have high in vitamin C and all these different nutrients that I need. And the more successful you are with giving your body everything it needs, from healthy thoughts to spirituality to physicality, the more you're going to be able to grow and self-develop. Because if you're sick all the time, you're having the energy, how in the world are you going to be able to do an internal barometer to say, all right, my body's doing well, but I'm struggling over here? You're not going to have the energy to do that. So I would really recommend that each one of you just be aware of that whatever you ingest, it's taking away from your ability to be more mindful. It's taking away from your ability to be more spiritual, because unfortunately, it's taking energy. So for example, if we all have like 100 points we're given a day, 100 points to allocate here, here, and here. If I'm ingesting something and now I've just used 30 of those points to ingest something, and all of a sudden I feel really sick and I go to bed, well, all those 30 points I could have used for something else. And so the problem with that is if we're not aware that all of those elements of your spirit, mind, and body, that's the way I look at it, if we're not in balance, or I'm stealing points from here or there, I'm going to be bankrupt for my day. So if I'm trying to be so self-aware and have all this awareness here, but I'm stealing from that ability with something I've just eaten, I've just consumed, I'm not doing myself a service at all. So there's so much I can say on that, but do definitely recommend that each one of you, those of you who have insurance, like I said, it's usually covered. Those of you who do not have one, or have insurance to cover that, perhaps just look into something like that as well, because you'll find that the food profiles that probably thought you could eat, you may not be able to eat them like you thought, because if you're finding that you're not as focused, you don't have the energy, you don't have the ability to do some things, it's probably because of what you've ingested.
Yeah, it's huge. Absolutely huge. Well, James Miller, it's about that time, my friend.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. Thank you all for your amazing questions. Really good.
All right. So podcast, Lifeology. Check you out on the website, jamesmillerlifeology.com.
Yes. So the show is actually James Miller Lifeology. So you can find it on any streaming platform, iHeartRadio, all the radio stations, anything you can think of, it's on there. So James Miller Lifeology, jamesmillerlifeology.com.
Love that. Any parting words?
I had a great time. I guess the parting words would be, information is the key. You don't know what you don't know. The only way to be successful is through knowledge. And that can be through reading, that can be through talking. More importantly, it's from listening. When you can listen to someone, you're going to ask yourself, am I learning something from them, or am I like them, and do I want to be like them? Or am I doing something that's stopping my own health and development?
I love that. James, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, man. You got me all charged up. I don't even your energy just bleeds through this monitor here, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Definitely. Well, we loved having you. We'd love to have you back. So I'll be contacting you this year again, and maybe we'll do a little bit more on the diet stuff too, because it's so crucial. It's really crucial. So thanks for all of your wisdom and your energy and your enthusiasm and your awesome attitude. Like,
you're welcome.
Speak for the whole tribe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
Definitely. Our pleasure. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. See you, man.